I sat in my car outside the coffee shop staring at my phone. The job interview had gone badly. Really badly. When the manager said they would call me, I knew they wouldn't. My hands were still shaking when my phone rang. It was Evan, my older brother. He never called unless something was wrong. His voice sounded strange, too careful, like he was reading from a script someone else had written. He said Mom and Dad wanted a family meeting tonight. Nothing serious, he claimed. Just dinner and some talking. But I heard something underneath his words. Something rehearsed. Then he slipped. Just for a second. He said, they already made up their minds. I asked what he meant. He went quiet. Then he said he had to go and hung up. I sat there with the phone in my lap. Made up their minds about what? A cold feeling spread through my chest. I started the car and drove toward my childhood home. The sky was turning dark. I had no idea I was driving toward the worst night of my life. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 7. The house looked normal. Lights on in the living room. Dad's truck parked in its usual spot. But something felt off. Too quiet. Too still. I walked up the porch steps and opened the front door. Everyone was already inside. Sitting. Waiting. Mom was on the couch. Dad in his armchair. Evan stood near the window with his arms crossed. Nobody smiled. Nobody said hello. Mom's face was tight. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to give a speech. I closed the door behind me and stood there. The air felt heavy. Then Dad spoke. His voice was formal, distant, like I was a stranger. He said we needed to have an important conversation. He gestured toward the chair across from him. I sat down slowly. My heart was pounding. Mom wouldn't look at me. Evan stared at the floor. Dad reached for a folder on the coffee table. A plain manila folder. He pushed it toward me across the table. He said, we need to talk about dependency. I opened the folder. Inside was a printed document. Typed, formatted, official looking. I started reading. My name was at the top. Then paragraphs of cold, legal-sounding language. Words like financial burden, and lack of accountability, and enabling destructive patterns. It was a contract. An agreement stating they would no longer provide financial support or housing assistance of any kind. It said I had failed to demonstrate responsibility. It said continuing to help me would harm the family. I read it twice. My hands started shaking. This wasn't a conversation. This was a termination letter. From my own parents. I looked up. Mom was watching me now. Her face was hard. She said, we need you to sign it. Her voice was flat. No emotion. No warmth. Asked why. She said it was for my own good. That I needed to learn independence. That they had carried me long enough. Dad nodded. He said if I wanted to remain part of this family, I needed to prove I could stand on my own. Mom slid a pen across the table. She said, sign it. Or leave. I sat frozen. My mind was spinning. Evan finally spoke. He said I had always been a burden on the family. That I never took anything seriously. That I always came running to them when things got hard. His words cut deep. I tried to defend myself. I said I had been trying. That finding work was hard right now. That I just needed a little more time. My voice cracked. Dad cut me off. He said time was up. That they had given me 24 years of chances. That it was over. I looked at Mom. I thought maybe she would soften. Maybe she would see how cruel this was. But she just stared back. Unmoved. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. I said I wouldn't sign it. That this was insane. Dad stood too. His face went red. He pointed at the door. He said if I walked out without signing I shouldn't come back. Ever. The room went silent. Evan looked away. Mom folded her arms. I realized they meant it. This was real. I grabbed my backpack from the hallway. I didn't say another word. I walked toward the door. My legs felt like they weren't mine. Behind me I heard Mom whisper to Dad. She said, she'll be back begging in a week. Her voice was smug. Certain. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. Something inside me shifted. I turned and looked at her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, no. I won't. Then I walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft click. I stood on the porch in the cold night air. My chest was tight. My eyes burned. I walked to my car and sat inside. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, staring at the house. The house I grew up in. The house that just kicked me out. I whispered to myself in the dark. I said, I'll never come back. Not ever. I started the car and drove away. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. I ended up at Tori's apartment. She was my best friend from high school. She opened the door in pajamas, saw my face and pulled me inside without asking questions. I slept on her couch that night. I tried not to cry. Tried to stay quiet. But I couldn't. The tears came anyway. Silent. Hot. Angry. I cried for the parents I thought I had. For the family I thought would always be there. For the daughter they threw away like garbage. Tori sat with me until I fell asleep. The next morning she made coffee and sat across from me. She asked what I was going to do. I said I didn't know. She leaned forward. Her voice was gentle but firm. She said, "What if this is the thing that finally sets you free?" I looked at her. She said maybe this was my chance to stop waiting for their approval. To stop living in Evan's shadow. To build something that was mine. I didn't believe her then. But her words stuck with me. I dried my eyes. I nodded. I didn't know it yet, but that morning was the beginning of everything. I spent the next 2 weeks applying everywhere. Coffee shops. Retail stores. Restaurants. Anything. I got rejected over and over. Then finally I got a call. A small real estate office downtown needed a front desk receptionist. The pay was low. The job was basic. Answering phones. Filing paperwork. Scheduling appointments. But it was something. I took it. My first day was overwhelming. The office was small. Just 3 agents and a broker named Patricia. She was older, sharp, no nonsense. She showed me the filing system and left me alone. I worked hard. Showed up early. Stayed late. I learned the systems. Memorized client names. Kept everything organized. After a month, Patricia called me into her office. She said I was doing good work. That I had an eye for detail. Then she asked me something I wasn't expecting. She said, "You ever consider getting into real estate yourself?" I said no. She smiled. She said, "You should. You've got the instincts for it." That conversation stayed with me. I started paying attention to the deals the agents were working on. The numbers. The strategies. The patterns. It was fascinating. I started studying real estate after work. I bought books from thrift stores. Watched hours of YouTube videos. Learned about zoning laws and property cycles and market forecasting. I couldn't stop. It was like something clicked in my brain. I saw patterns everywhere. Opportunities. Risks. Numbers that told stories. Tori thought I was obsessed. He was right. I was. But it felt good. Like I had finally found something I was good at. Something that made sense. One day I saw a listing online. A small duplex on the east side of town. It was in foreclosure. The pictures were rough. Peeling paint. Overgrown yard. Broken windows. But the price was unbelievably low. Almost too low. I showed it to Patricia. She said it was a gamble. That properties like that usually had hidden problems. But she also said if I could fix it up I could make real money. I looked at my savings. I had just enough. Barely. I thought about it for days. Everyone I talked to said it was a mistake. Too risky. Too much work. But something inside me said to do it anyway. So I did. I used every dollar I had saved. Patricia helped me get a small employee loan to cover the closing costs. The day I signed the papers my hands shook. I owned property. Me. The daughter my parents threw away. I went to see it the next day. It was worse in person. The smell hit me first. Mold. Rot. Decay. The floors were warped. The walls had holes. The kitchen was destroyed. I stood in the living room and felt panic rising. What had I done? The inspection came back a week later. It revealed even more problems. Bad wiring. Cracked foundation. Plumbing issues. The inspector said it would cost thousands to fix. Money I didn't have. I sat on the front steps of that broken house and wanted to cry. I had gambled everything. And it looked like I was going to lose. Tori found me there. She sat down next to me. She said, "So we fix it." I said I didn't know how. She said, "Then we learn." Her fiancé Marcus was a carpenter. He agreed to help. We started small. One problem at a time. One YouTube tutorial at a time. I spent every evening and weekend at that duplex. I learned how to patch drywall. How to replace outlets. How to sand and paint and caulk. Marcus taught me the basics of plumbing and carpentry. Tori helped with demo work. We ripped out rotten wood, pulled up old carpet, scrubbed away years of neglect. It was brutal. My hands were covered in cuts and blisters. My back ached. But slowly the house started to change. The smell went away. The walls got patched. The floors got cleaned. I painted every room myself. Soft gray walls. White trim. Simple but clean. After 3 months it was done. Not perfect, but livable. I posted an ad online. A couple came to see it the next day. They walked through slowly. Tested the faucets. Opened closets. Checked the windows. I held my breath. Then the woman turned to me. She smiled. She said, "We'll take it." I felt my knees go weak. They signed the lease that afternoon. The rent was double my monthly salary. I had done it. I had actually done it. The rental income changed everything. Suddenly I had breathing room. I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck anymore. I could eat without checking my bank account. I could buy new work clothes. I could save. But I didn't spend it. I reinvested every dollar. I started looking for more properties. Patricia noticed. She pulled me aside one day and handed me a stack of papers. Study materials for the real estate licensing exam. She said I was wasting my potential at the front desk. That I should get licensed and start working as an agent. I studied every night. I took the exam 3 months later. I passed on the first try. Patricia hired me as a junior agent the same week. I started small. Helping other agents with their listings. Showing houses. Learning the business from the inside. But I kept buying properties on the side. Small ones. Fixer-uppers. Nothing fancy. I learned to spot value where others saw junk. Word started spreading. People said I was fair. Honest. Hardworking. Clients started asking for me specifically. My commissions grew. My portfolio grew. I was building something real. It had been 8 months since the night my parents kicked me out. I hadn't spoken to them once. Evan sent a few texts early on. I ignored them. Then one day my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. It said, "Call me. It's urgent." I stared at it. I almost deleted it. But something made me call. He answered on the first ring. His voice sounded stressed. Tired. He said he needed to talk to me about Mom and Dad. I said I didn't care. He said I should. He told me they had made a bad investment. Some kind of business deal that went south. They lost a lot of money. More than they could afford. He said they were in trouble. Real trouble. But they were too proud to admit it publicly. I asked why he was telling me. He said because I was still family. Because he thought I should know. Then he said something that surprised me. He said, "Don't tell them I told you." His voice cracked. I realized he was scared. Scared of them. Just like I used to be. I hung up and sat in silence. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just emptiness. Weeks passed. I kept working. Kept building. Then one day I was scrolling through listings and saw something that made me stop. A lakefront property. Huge. Beautiful. Surrounded by trees. A wraparound porch. A dock leading down to the water. I recognized it immediately. My parents had been obsessed with this house for years. Mom had saved pictures of it on Pinterest. She called it their dream retirement home. She used to drive by it just to look. She said one day they would buy it. One day when Evan took over the family business. One day when everything was perfect. And now it was listed as a pre-foreclosure. The owners were desperate. The price was lower than it should have been. They needed a fast sale. Cash buyer preferred. I sat at my desk staring at the listing. My heart was pounding. I had the money. I had the credit. I could buy it. Right now. I thought about my mother's voice. She'll be back begging. I thought about my father's finger pointing at the door. I thought about Evan saying I was a burden. I made the call. I scheduled a viewing. The house was even more beautiful in person. The realtor walked me through every room. Hardwood floors. Granite countertops. Huge windows overlooking the lake. A stone fireplace. A master suite with a balcony. It was perfect. Exactly the way my parents had dreamed. The realtor said the owners were motivated. They needed to close within 30 days. I made an offer that afternoon. Full asking price. No contingencies. They accepted within an hour. I signed the papers 3 days later. I didn't tell anyone. Not Tori. Not Patricia. Not Evan. I just bought it. Quietly. Privately. The closing happened on a Tuesday morning. I walked out of the title company with the keys in my hand. I drove to the house and stood in the driveway. The house my parents wanted more than anything. The house they said they deserved. And now it was mine. I walked inside. The sunlight poured through the windows. The lake sparkled beyond the trees. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not revenge. Not spite. Just peace. I was home. I didn't post about it. Didn't tell anyone. I just moved in quietly. I hired movers to bring my few belongings from Tori's place. I bought furniture slowly. A couch. A bed. A kitchen table. I made it mine. Simple. Clean. Comfortable. Then one day I was scrolling through social media. I almost never did anymore. But something made me look. I saw a post from my mother. It was a photo of the lake house. An old photo from the listing. The caption said, "Heartbroken we lost our dream home. Some stranger bought it out from under us. Life is so unfair sometimes." I stared at the post. She had no idea. No idea that the stranger was me. That the daughter she threw away now owned the thing she wanted most. I closed the app. I didn't comment. Didn't message her. Didn't say a word. I just went back to unpacking. That night I sat on the back porch with a glass of water. The stars were out. The lake was calm. I breathed in the cool air and smiled. Evan called again a few weeks later. I almost didn't answer. But I did. He sounded worse than before. Panicked. He said Mom and Dad were selling their house. The house I grew up in. They couldn't afford the mortgage anymore. Their debts were piling up. They were drowning. But they were still too proud to ask for help. Still pretending everything was fine. He said Dad had started drinking more. Mom barely left the house. Their friends were distancing themselves. The perfect image they worked so hard to build was crumbling. He asked if I would consider reaching out. Maybe helping them. I said no. He begged. He said they were still my parents. I said they made their choice. He started crying. I had never heard Evan cry before. He said he didn't know what to do. That he felt trapped. That he was sorry for what happened that night. I told him it was too late for sorry. I hung up. My phone started ringing again. It was my father. Then my mother. Then my father again. I sent every call to voicemail. I didn't listen to the messages. I just deleted them. The town started talking. Small towns always do. People whispered about my parents' financial collapse. About the house going up for sale. About the perfect family that wasn't so perfect anymore. Old friends stopped calling them. Invitations dried up. The people who used to envy them now pitied them. My mother stopped posting on social media. My father stopped going to his social club. They became invisible. Meanwhile, my business kept growing. I had a reputation now. Clients trusted me. I was closing deals every week. Making more money than I ever thought possible. Tori and I started talking about opening our own consultancy. A small firm focused on helping first-time buyers and investors. We drafted a business plan. Found an office space. Filed the paperwork. Patricia supported us. She said I had earned it. Then one day Tori came to me looking worried. She said my mother had shown up at her workplace. Asking questions. Trying to find out where I lived. Tori told her she didn't know. My mother didn't believe her. She said if Tori saw me to tell me my family needed me. That it was time to come home. Around that same time something unexpected happened. The city approved a new zoning plan for the area around the lake. They were allowing commercial development. Shops. Restaurants. A marina. Property values in the area exploded overnight. The house I bought for a steal was suddenly worth triple. Maybe more. Real estate investors started circling. I got calls every day. People wanting to make offers. One developer offered me an insane amount of money. Enough to retire. Enough to never work again. He wanted to tear down the house and build luxury condos. I listened to his pitch. Smiled politely. And said no. He looked confused. He raised his offer. I said no again. He asked why. I said because it wasn't for sale. He left frustrated. Tori asked me later why I turned him down. I said because some things weren't about money. She smiled. He understood. That house was mine. Not because of what it was worth. But because of what it meant. I had built something. From nothing. By myself. And no one could take that from me. Our consultancy opened on a rainy Tuesday in October. Torai and I stood in the empty office with paint cans and boxes everywhere. We painted the walls ourselves. Hung our business license on the wall. Set up desks and computers. We called it Pike and Reeves Real Estate Consulting. My last name and hers. Equal partners. We opened the doors the following Monday. Clients started coming in immediately. Word of mouth spread fast. We specialized in helping people who had been overlooked by bigger firms. First-time buyers. People with bad credit. Families who thought they couldn't afford homes. We worked long hours. But it was worth it. We were building something good. Something honest. Something that helped people instead of taking advantage of them. Then one night I got another message from Evan. It was short. Just 5 words. They're losing the house tomorrow. I read it twice. I put my phone down. I poured a glass of wine. I sat on my back porch and watched the sunset over the lake. I felt nothing. No guilt. No sadness. Just quiet. My parents' house sold at auction. I didn't go. But I heard about it. Everything inside went too. Furniture. Jewelry. Family heirlooms. Things they said would never be sold. Things they said were priceless. All of it gone. People who used to admire them now watched them fall. Some felt sorry for them. Most just moved on. Life continued. Evan moved into a small apartment across town. He got a job at a warehouse. He stopped calling me. I think he finally realized I wasn't coming back. Then something strange happened. The man who bought my parents' old house reached out to me. He needed an agent to help him with some other investments. He had heard I was good. Fair. Honest. He hired me. I took the job. I went to the house to do paperwork. The house I grew up in. It looked different already. New paint. New furniture. A different family's photos on the walls. I walked through the rooms. I felt nothing. No nostalgia. No sadness. It was just a house. I finished the paperwork and left. I never went back. During that meeting, the buyer mentioned something casually. He said my parents could have saved their house. That they had options. Investments they could have liquidated. But my father refused. He was too proud. He didn't want to admit he had made a mistake. Didn't want to sell the things he considered status symbols. His classic car. His boat. His club membership. He held on to those things while his family fell apart. He chose pride over survival. I sat in my car afterward. Processing that. Their downfall wasn't bad luck. It wasn't the economy. It wasn't even the bad investment. It was their own arrogance. Their refusal to adapt. Their need to look perfect even while everything burned. I drove home. Evan called again that night. I answered. He was drunk. Crying. He begged me to talk to them. He said they were broken. Lost. He said they needed me. I asked if they had apologized. He went quiet. Then he admitted they hadn't. They still blamed circumstances. Blamed the economy. Blamed bad advice. Everyone but themselves. I told him I was done. I hung up. I blocked his number. I started spending more time at the lake house. I renovated the back porch. Added a fire pit. Planted flowers along the walkway. I made it beautiful. One evening I was sitting outside when a mail truck pulled up. The driver handed me a letter. It was addressed to current homeowner. No name. Just that. I opened it. The handwriting was my mother's. I recognized it immediately. The letter was 3 pages long. She wrote about regret. About how hard things had been. About how unfair life was. But nowhere in those 3 pages did she apologize. Nowhere did she take responsibility. She blamed the economy. Blamed bad business partners. Blamed Evan for not helping enough. He even blamed me. She said if I had been more responsible, maybe they wouldn't have had to be so hard on me. Maybe things would have turned out differently. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully. I put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She still didn't understand. And she probably never would. I went to the front of the house. There was an old wooden sign near the porch. The previous owner's name was carved into it. I took it down. I ordered a new one. Simple black letters on white wood. It said, Pike Residence. When it arrived, I hung it myself. I stood back and looked at it. My name. On my house. On the house my parents said would never be mine. On the house they said belonged to people who had their lives together. People who weren't burdens. I smiled. Not out of revenge. Not out of spite. Just satisfaction. I had built this. Not with their help. Not with their approval. I built it after they threw me away. I built it from nothing. And it was mine. Completely. Totally. Mine. That night I made dinner in my kitchen. I ate on my porch. I watched the stars reflect on the lake. I thought about the girl who sat crying on Tori's couch. The girl who thought her life was over. I wished I could tell her it would be okay. That she would be okay. Better than okay. I went to bed in my own house. In my own bed. In a life I built with my own hands. Months passed. Business kept growing. Tori and I hired 2 assistants. We moved into a bigger office. We started teaching workshops for first-time buyers. People drove from other towns to attend. My reputation spread. I was featured in a local business magazine. The article talked about my success. About building a business from the ground up. About helping underserved communities. My parents never reached out after the letter. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they moved to a smaller town an hour away. They rented a small apartment. My father took a part-time job. My mother stopped talking to most of her old friends. They became ghosts. I never sought them out. Never drove by. Never looked them up online. I simply moved forward. Tori got married. I was her maid of honor. Marcus and I built a garden shed together at their new house. We laughed the whole time. I had a family. Not the one I was born into. But the one I chose. The one that chose me back. That was worth more than anything. I sit on my balcony now. The one overlooking the lake. The one my mother used to dream about. I'm drinking coffee. Barefoot. Peaceful. The morning sun is warm. The water is calm. Birds are singing. I think about everything that happened. About the night they handed me that folder. About the choice they gave me. Sign or leave. I think about how they expected me to come crawling back. How they were so sure I would fail. But I didn't. I didn't destroy them. I didn't fight them. I didn't seek revenge. I simply became someone they never believed I could be. My success didn't punish them. Their own arrogance did. Their pride. Their refusal to see their mistakes. Me. I learned something important. Family isn't defined by who you're born to. It's defined by who believes in you when you have nothing. Who stands beside you when everyone else walks away. I close my eyes. I feel the breeze on my face. I smile. I own the dream now. Not theirs. Mine. Not out of revenge. But because I finally knew my worth. And I never looked back.